Thank you, Mr Deputy President. And I'm glad to be given another opportunity to speak on the need to hold an inquiry into the construction of transmission lines against farmland. And as a voting member of the RAT committee, I would welcome the opportunity to hear from concerned constituents whose land will be impacted by the construction of transmission lines, and also other stakeholders who are concerned about the construction of transmission lines against, say, being built in state forests or national parks, or against other personal property, wherever that may be. And I have to say I'm incredibly disappointed in the Labor Party for refusing to hold or refusing to vote with this particular motion to hold an inquiry into the construction of transmission lines against across our natural landscapes, because we are in the Senate. The Senate is a house of review. We are entitled to ask questions. We are entitled to go out and engage with the community about their concerns. Now, I have heard from many farmers and many other constituents who are concerned about the impact of the environment by the construction of transmission lines. And I don't think it's fair, because I well remember the Prime Minister saying when he was opposition leader in leading up to last year's election how he was going to be the government of transparency. And yet we are not seeing that. We have seen the Labor government refuse to be transparent about aged care workers, the number of nurses being placed in aged care centres. They're not being transparent about the price of energy. Our colleague Senator Dunniam has asked for a quarterly reporting into energy prices. They're not being transparent about that. They're not being transparent about National Cabinet and the release of minutes in National Cabinet. And yet again, we see another example of where this government does not want to be transparent about the impact of transmission lines on our environment. And the other thing we need to look at is the impact of the financial consideration that will be given to stakeholders if transmission lines and other renewables, for that matter, not just transmission lines but wind turbines and solar panels, are actually built on private property, how these farmers will be compensated, and if they're not going to be compensated, who picks up the bill for when these transmission lines or the wind turbines or whatever have to be deconstructed in 20 years. These are reasonable questions, and I think that the public deserves both to have a say, number one, and other concerned constituents are entitled to listen and hear what the particular stakeholders have to say about the impact of renewables on the environment, and also on the impact of property rights for our hard-working farmers and other stakeholders involved in this process. So I look forward to holding the division. I have to say I'm very disappointed in the Labor government for not voting for this. I hope we get the crossbench on side. I'm sure One Nation will. But I think David Pocock, I can well remember Senator Pocock, when he first gave his maiden speech, said he was on the side of the farmers. He said he was on the side of the farmers. So this is your opportunity, Senator Pocock, if you're listening, to lend your support into an inquiry about the impact of transmission lines and how that will impact farmers, not just on their farmland itself, but financially as well, and what contractual obligations they will be under to clean up the renewables when they come to the end of their useful life, whether it be in 10 years' time or 20 years' time. This is something that we need to see get up. I don't expect the Greens to support it, because they're not really interested in protecting the environment. Whenever it comes to things like this, they do not want to look at the impact, the potential damaging impact of renewables on the environment. And that is something that I know that we will continue to prosecute in opposition, is call out the hypocrisy of both the Labor Party and the Greens for not wanting to be honest about the damage, the environmental damage that renewables will do to the environment. Thank you.
Authorised G. Rennick, LNP Chermside.